All right, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this 2022 new gardener session for the Chinquapin Organic Gardens. We are very pleased to have so many new gardeners this year, and we hope this will provide you guys with just some good information and a solid foundation to get started on your plots. I am Elizabeth Charles. I am one of the board members for Chinquapin, and I'm kind of going to MC us today, and we will, I guess, first, whichever board members are on, do you want to just very quickly introduce yourselves? And, you know, this is a community garden, so we can't stress enough that, you know, we are a community and we want you guys to reach out to us. If you see us in the plots, come talk to us. We're always happy to talk gardening and give plenty of advice. So, you know, we are here to help. So if everyone just wants to introduce themselves briefly, just the board members, not everyone, just so you know who we are.
Why don't we say our names, Richard? Start with you.
Oh.
Unmute. You need to unmute.
You're muted. There you go.
Richard Dorier, I'm the chair of the board, and welcome everybody. And I'm at plot T8 in the lower garden.
And I'm Ann Saul, and I'm the vice chair, and my plot is M5, and I've been gardening at Chinquapin for going on 18 years, and I'm still learning. Ed, you're not mute. You're muted.
Okay, sorry. Ed Mensch, plot H2. Say hi.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm in C1.
Stacy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Stacy and I'm in F5.
And Catherine made it.
2 hours and 20 minutes. Roll in.
Just introduce yourself and your plot number.
Catherine Long, K7.
Wonderful. I think we got all the board that is here. And I'm sorry, I should have said I'm in plot 03. So to kick us off tonight, Richard, who is our board chair, and Ann, who is our vice chair, are going to start off with a very brief overview of the city garden and our garden rules and regulations, which you did receive via email, but it's good to just kind of go over a few things. Talk about how the monitoring works, volunteer hours, and then we will move on to some other tips and other things about the garden. So I will turn it over to Ann and Richard.
Yes, okie doke. Thanks, Elizabeth. I'll just start and then Ann, you can kind of take over here. I noticed, I looked up that Chinquapin has been around as a garden since 1972. This is our 50th year of continuous gardening. So we must probably are one of the oldest Northern Virginia gardens, if not the oldest. And we also, of course, are an organic garden, and one of the, the biggest garden certainly in Alexandria, and probably a pretty major garden. We have 176 plots. So we are a major garden community in the whole region. As all of y'all know, the city owns the land, and we rent our plots from the city. So the city really is, they're the ones who established the garden at the park and it's sort of one of the many park features at Chinquapin. And then they let us rent our plots, as you know, and of course we write our checks to the city. And then we've worked out an agreement between the city and then an advisory board. We've had an advisory board for about 25 years. So not the whole time. It was really established to set up to help the city because with the management of the plots, as you know, of course, we sort of up there a lot and are closer to the gardens and can help us kind of oversee things. And then we've created a list of things that we do in our board that we help manage. And the city has a list of things that they help take care of and manage. So it's a shared relationship, and it's worked pretty well. So I guess so that's just an overview of the plot. And I think Elizabeth is a real good point that we all up there quite a bit. This is my 5th year gardening, and we are available, and of course answer any questions when you see us, and of course are available by email anytime. Anne, did you want to give a overview of the regulations, or?
Yeah, as Richard mentioned, we have 176 plots, and this year we have 39 new gardeners, which is actually, pretty much what we have every year. It seems like a high number, but it really isn't. There are some cases when people leave because they move or change jobs or whatever. Unfortunately, in many cases, most of the cases, they find out how hard it is to garden, even in a 17 by 17 plot. It's a lot of work. And especially if you've inherited a plot that, is not in the best condition. It gets frustrating, particularly in the summer months when it gets very hot. So I would suggest for any of you who are just starting out in that condition is to simply try and focus on half of your plot. Maybe you cover the other half and just work on the one half that you can manage until you get it under control. There are, one of the things that we do is, as you know, you got a copy of the rules and regulations from the city. And we also sent you an email with a lot of information for new gardeners and how everything is managed. One of the things we do is, because the city cannot do it, we provide monitoring services. That's throughout the season. 5 times during the season, we have a group of gardeners and who go and check the plots to see if they are in compliance with the various regulations. So, in many cases, it's a matter of simply having the city send an email to the gardener to remind them that they need to take care of their paths, or they've got a little issue with weeds or things like that. It's not meant to be punitive, but it's a community garden. And so your neighbor's weeds become your weeds. And so we want to try and help people take care of their plots and take care of their paths so that doesn't happen. The monitoring program is voluntary, and the time you devote to it, those of you who signed up to monitor, is counted towards your volunteer hours, which I'll talk about in just a second. I did send out an email just the other day to those of you who had said on your application forms that you would be willing to participate in the monitoring. And so I've asked for sign-up dates, and I've heard from quite a few. So we're in pretty good shape for that. If any of you did not sign up and want to participate in the monitoring, just send me an email, let me know, and we'll add you to the program. It's not a matter, it's a matter of not having 1 or 2 people monitor the plots. We want to have a collective group monitoring. So did we want to talk about the volunteering, Richard?
Yeah.
Volunteering hours.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. As Richard mentioned, we do have a volunteer program, and this was started a few years ago, and it was in an effort to get the city to reduce the cost of renting the plots. It was going to go, it was pretty sky high. So we stepped in and negotiated a memorandum of understanding with the city that we would take over some of the duties that the city had done before. And and they would then not charge us as much to rent the plots. And so that's the reason we have a requirement, unless you pay the opt-out fee, which is basically double your rental fee, you participate in the volunteering program. You're required to contribute 4 hours a year, a season, which is not really a lot when you think about it. And the goal here is to take care of things that the city used to do. That includes mowing around the perimeter, big perimeter areas. It can include things like replacing plot markers because they get worn, they get broken off, they're missing. Leveling paths, attending the meetings, because at the meetings, at the annual, at the monthly advisory board meetings, we're talking about things that we need to do, projects that we need to take on. So that counts. And then also in the monitoring. Those are many ways that you can participate in the volunteer program. We will, Richard and I are working on updating the list, which I will send out to everybody who agreed to participate in volunteering this year. And it's updated regularly. And we also posted in the kiosk next to the shed so that you can sign up to participate in some of the various programs. My big suggestion to you is don't wait until the end of the season to complete your 4 hours, because invariably something will come up where you have to leave town or be gone or whatever. And next thing you know, you're scrambling. And if you don't meet your 4-hour requirement by November 30th, you will be charged the opt-out fee when you try to renew. So the earlier you start, the better. And we have projects coming up all through the season that we'll add to the volunteer list. And I also will, when I send out the list and the link to the list, we'll also provide you, there's a form, we have an online form. I'll just send you the link to the form and you just have to fill in your time on that. It's pretty easy to report it.
Yeah, thank you, Ann. So just to reemphasize, please read the regulations that we have, that they're on the website, and then you received them by email. Everybody that's starting, and it's also good for all of us to look at them again each year just to refresh ourselves. But things we do, we consistently have to deal with some issues like what people put in the trash, constructing things in the plot, and all of that is spelled out in the regulations to try to keep our community organized and all fair to each other. And so that's really helpful. We started this Zoom session last year because of really, I guess, because of the COVID and the pandemic, and I just wanted to say something about that. We found it effective and easy to have this. Of course, all of us have been doing and using Zoom during the pandemic, and we actually run our board meetings by Zoom now. So we found it pretty effective and helpful as a way to communicate. So we're doing it again this year. On COVID, as you know, things have gotten better. We follow the rules of the city. We are outside at the garden, so that in a large respect, it shouldn't be an issue. COVID really shouldn't be an issue for us. We all spread out. We have 16 by 16 or 17 by 17 foot plots, and we really, the only a few times where we have and come together as a congregate group. So every time we do that, if for instance, if we have a picnic or that kind of thing, we look at where we stand in terms of COVID, and things can change. How the shed in particular is an inside environment, so we've been in the past, we've been restrictive about that, but at the moment, as you all know, Alexandria has a low COVID rating, so no masks are required, and that's our rule at the garden. The only thing I just want to emphasize is that things can change, and so if you see new sign go up about how we should either social distance or use masks, we ask you to respect that for all of us and for all of our safety and health. So that was really just a few things to go over at the beginning here, Elizabeth. So I guess we move on to your next item.
Wonderful. Thank you. And guys, we will take questions at the end. So if you have any questions about the rules and regulations that hopefully you've read over, or how to maintain the paths between your plots, or what you can actually, build and construct in your plots, we're happy to answer all those questions at the end, just to make sure you're within the stipulations of the regulations. So
I think
next
you
up,
can also, as you're thinking about questions, maybe just post a question in the chat.
yeah, if you have
Yeah.
them in the meantime, definitely put them in the chat, but we will have time in the end. So next up, we're gonna let Margie and Stacy talk to us about the food bank. I'm gonna share their slides. Here we go, ladies. So the food bank started, was it in 2020? So I will turn it over to y'all and let you talk about your wonderful work.
Okay, well, I will get started there. So, hi everyone. Again, I'm Stacy, and I, along with Margie, we are leading the food bank effort this year. In 2020, we had 2 dedicated plots to grow, harvest, and package produce and herbs. In that first year, we had about a dozen volunteers and 2, and then later 3 plots to maintain, and the team members took over planting, weeding, watering, and everything associated with growing food for the food bank, in addition to donating some of their own materials, such as plants and the structures that you see there, different additives and tools. All those were used, and an additional 20 gardeners helped donate their own produce. In 2021, there weren't any dedicated plots to start with, but this team still worked on the food bank projects and acquired a couple of plots throughout the season of gardeners that may have been unable to maintain their own plots. And with those additional plots and the success of the program, we were able to double our production to 8 to 12 boxes a week for a total of 27 weeks. And that was a pretty good, successful program. At the end of last season, where this is now different, going into our 3rd season, we requested from the city to have dedicated plots so that we would have our own plots every year and not have to worry about obtaining them after gardeners have given them up or in different manner. So we had proposed to the city to do this, and they agreed with our request. And now the city lets us own 2 plots, which are C3 and G3, that we can grow food throughout the season for the Mother of Light Food Bank. And that's kind of where we are looking for your help. We are looking to have support to grow this into an even better season. We have a request for volunteers that are coming, and there are many different ways that you can help in ways big and small. We have people that help with the planting, collection every week, accepting donations. We clean all the vegetables that come from the gardens and package them to the food bank for delivery. We meet on Saturday mornings to harvest those produce. And we also have maintenance tasks and a wish list of materials that we are looking for to support this effort. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can help if you're able to volunteer and help us on the weekends, or if you have, extra plants that you would like to donate, that would help too. Next slide, Elizabeth. So
Yeah,
the 2 main ways.
I will every week, once they start the donations, I send out a reminder email to anyone who wants to donate produce to have it delivered to the food bank volunteers on Saturday morning, or they will harvest it for you.
Exactly. Yep. Those 2 different ways are we are collecting what we actually grow in these dedicated plots, but then we're also doing what we call, vacation collection, collecting from our fellow gardeners from your own garden. If there are things that you maybe got sick of eating or grew too many, or you're just looking to donate them, we will collect them and put them with our overall delivery. And that's worked out really well. So if you're going away for the weekend, just send us a note. You'll get Anne's email. The contact information will be in there, and we collect your produce and add it to our weekly delivery. At the right, you'll see we accept pretty much everything. This is just a short list, but anything that you're growing, the center has really been appreciative of it, and they are very much looking forward to some of the items that we deliver to them, because it's different than what they get from others. And overall, this project has really been successful. So we're hoping to get more people involved. It's been a really great way to get to know others in the garden and learn from each other. And we're hoping this, helps spark some camaraderie in the garden and the spirit of continuous learning. So if you're interested, there is our contact information. There'll also be an email coming from Ann, so you don't have to jot this down right now, but we're looking forward to have many of you join us on our team this year.
So this is Margie, who is Stacy's partner in crime, so to speak.
Yeah.
I noticed a question came from somebody in the chat room about whether this counts toward our volunteer hours. It does not. Our volunteer hours that count are the ones that keep the city from having to do maintenance. So we're saving the city money by doing our volunteer hours on the paths or on the things that the city now doesn't have to do. But this is over and above, and this is a new kind of venture. It will not count toward your 4 hours. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, this is definitely a gardener initiative. Doesn't involve the city. This is something that we came up with on our own.
Yeah,
It was-
and
it
we're
was-
really grateful for Donna, who led us the last couple of years and still is our expert helper. So thanks, Donna.
Sure.
This was initiated during the pandemic when there were some real issues with folks getting food and having money to buy food. And I noticed just today there's an article in the Washington Post about the interest in food bank, or the need for food banks is still continuing even today. So this is a need that's ongoing. And fresh vegetables that's what we provide, and it's a really welcome thing for a lot of families in the Alexandria area.
Yeah, and we thank everyone for their hard work on the food bank. It's really been wonderful, and it's grown immensely over the last 2 seasons. So I'm sure this will also be an excellent year. And I will say to new gardeners, you will be out of town for a weekend and you'll have 50 tomatoes, and the food bank will take them so they don't go to waste. So don't forget that that's an option, because they will go pick them for you.
We'll also take care of your plot if you're away from vacation for a week, and we'll water for you and we'll harvest if you'll let us.
Yeah, so it's an amazing resource all around. So thank y'all so much. Okay, next up, Donna Lee is one of our resident gardeners, as well as a master gardener in Northern Virginia. And she is going to talk to us about the Master Gardener program, all the resources sorry, I'm trying to talk and share my screen. All the resources of the Master Gardeners and the Virginia Cooperative Extension, as well as a lot of just general tips. And all of this information we will send to y'all after the presentation. So Donna, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, good. All right. I am a master gardener. I became certified in 2017. So I've been officially an extension master gardener for 5 years. Been gardening my whole life. What I'm going to talk to you about are some of the resources available to you as beginning and experienced gardeners. You can add into that next slide. That's cool. Elizabeth, thanks. So Virginia Master Gardeners are actually a volunteer organization that is sponsored by the Virginia Cooperative Extension. Okay, just stay there. I'll tell you when to change. Okay, thanks. So Virginia Cooperative Extension is run in our state by Virginia Tech and Virginia Commonwealth University. If you think of the old A&M agriculture universities, that's what they were, and it was a means to get information originally to farmers, and now they view it as a need also to get information to us. We're called urban gardeners in our area here. So we're a bunch of volunteers, and we provide support. We're headquartered in Arlington, Alexandria, and our actual office, which is run by a Virginia Tech employee, Kirsten Conrad, is at Fairlington Rec Center in Arlington off of Quaker Lane. So it's real nearby our garden, actually, which is kind of nice. But we do a lot of things in terms of public education and getting the good ideas about gardening practices out to the community. So we have a help desk support. It had been, you could sometimes go in and you could call. We definitely have an email, and it's there on the slide. And you can, best thing to do if you have a problem with plants or some kind of question about planting is to send them pictures, a good description, and they will get back to you promptly. People are usually paying attention to that Monday through Friday. 9 a.m. to noon. We also teach a bunch of free classes, and that's a link there. I just recently taught a class on growing peppers, and with a colleague, Susan Wilhelm, I just taught a class called Virtual Vegetable Gardening Without Fear, parts 1 and 2. So if you're really a beginning gardener, that might be helpful. Both of those are 90-minute classes, and you can see them at your leisure, and you can download the slides for that. We also have plant clinics at the Arlington, Alexandria farmers markets, and occasionally at the libraries. We have been doing them before COVID, and I think they're going to be starting up, but I'm not sure exactly when, but we're definitely at the farmers markets. And the one at the Old Town Alexandria Farmers Market is going to be starting the beginning of May. They're Saturday mornings from 7 to 9:30. We also have a demonstration garden. We have some that focus more on plantings and landscaping, but we actually have an organic vegetable garden, and that's at Potomac Overlook. They're there Wednesday mornings. And so if you want to go and talk to people in person, that's another option. Next slide. So a couple things I wanted to point out. There's a ton of stuff on the MGNV website. One is Between the Rows. And I like that a lot because, go back one, on a monthly basis, we target different things that you need to do in your garden. We target the bugs that you might have to worry about for that month. So for instance, when I was teaching the pepper class, I was pointing out to people that in June, that's a time where you might need to worry about insects or pests that could bother your tomatoes and your peppers. And so it's a good time to go look at that section on the website. We also have a section that just has a ton of online resources, really from across the internet, that people have sort of curated for you. And then we have this virtual classroom. And so, yeah, there's a Vegetable Gardening Without Fear, but there's a class on edible landscaping. There's a class on seed starting, which some of you might be thinking about doing right now. I'm just starting some of my seeds for the garden, like tomatoes and peppers. And we have seed classes on how to even improve your soil, which, depending on your plot and how it was taken care of before you received it, that might be something you want to look at. So those are all free. They're Zoom classes that were recorded, just like this is being recorded and available to view. Next one. So just if you are new to gardening in this area, maybe you're not new to gardening, but this area, we are in zone 7A and B of the U.S. Department of Agriculture plant hardiness map. So that's important to know. When you look at the back of seed packets, they'll show sort of colored areas, and you'll see that one of those zones is 7. In our area, our last average killing frost is beginning April, the 1st to the 10th. Our average first killing frost is typically November 1st through the 10th. The average first killing frost in the fall is, from what I've seen the last few years, that's pretty typical. It's usually a little bit more towards the end of that period, like the 10th. Sometimes it even goes out to the 13th. That average last killing frost. Now, the thing with that is, you say, well, the beginning of April, if that's the last frost, we can start planting some of our tender things like peppers and basil and tomatoes. Well, 2 years ago, I think it was, we actually had a frost in the first week of May. And so people that had put their plants out already, some of them did have either some damage or lost some plants and had to replace them. So typically for those kind of tender things, we sort of recommend that you start a little bit later in April. And if you do plant later in April, when the temperatures have warmed up a little during the day and at night, we recommend you still keep an eye on the temperature. And it's easy to do now with the iPhones. Look at the weather for the next 7 days. And if it's going to get really cold or 34 degrees, you're going to need to possibly protect your plants. You put a row cover over them or something else like that. Some people do newspapers, but keep an eye out. But the good news is we have a growing season of over 180 days. That's over 6 months of being able to grow. And we have a lot of hot days, though. We'll get days in August and September where they'll be over 90 for days in a row, and nights that are over 70 for days in a row. So if you're growing tomatoes and peppers because they're your favorites, what you need to know is you have to be patient, because they're going to slow down when the temperatures get to 90s and 70s at night. And there'll be plants that look good, but they won't be doing anything. They won't be ripening. The tomatoes won't be turning red. There's nothing wrong. It's just that it's hot and they're taking a rest and they're waiting for things to cool down. So I just tell you that because everybody likes to grow those things. Other thing is rain. We typically in a year get 40 inches of rain. That's across January to the end of December. In 2018, we had a lot of rain. We had 64 inches or more. I think we broke a record. In 2020, again, we had 57, but last year we got something around 40. But the thing is, what you want is during the growing season, about an inch of rain a week. So what you want to do is pay attention. If it looks like it's been dry, you can get a rain gauge for $4. Keep an eye out on the rain and see if you need to rain. Some days, some weeks, we've gotten 6 inches of rain in 1 week. And with our clay soils that are really pretty much what we have in our garden area in Chinquapin, you'll get standing water because of the clay soils. And so if you have a plot where the soils haven't been amended with organic matter and you see standing water, there's some things that you can do to improve that, but it takes time. And you'll see some people have gone to raised beds as an option to try to help with some of that by raising their growing space up. Next. So this is a kind of cool chart you can print out on the other side, or sort of a calendar of tasks as you go through the year, what you might do in January, what you might do in February through December. That's the link to download this chart. It's nice because it sort of tells you for a bunch of common vegetables on the left-hand side, when you can start planting them and what's sort of the range of time. And if it's got an asterisk, that means that those things you're going to plant as transplants, not as seeds. But it's kind of handy to have because you can look at it right now and you can see that in March, there's some things you can actually be planting out in your garden. And then you can see that down near the end in August and September, you can start planting some stuff if you want to go late into the fall. And I think that might be it. Last chart. Oh, one more. So that's the back. So that's basically sort of a summary of what's on the back of that chart that was on the last slide. So here we are, we're in March, April. It's a good time if you just got your plot to start preparing your soil, weeding, starting seedlings indoors if you're into doing that yet. It might be a little early if you're just starting out. I'm happy to take, if anybody wants to come by the garden, there are a lot. I can meet you there and happy to take a look at your plot. And if you need any advice, I'm available. I'm interested. Okay, thanks. I think that's good. Last one. Yeah, we'll call it done. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I couldn't find my button to unmute myself.
That's okay. Right.
Perfect.
I'm gonna mute myself. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. That was great. So Donna is letting me crib off some of her slides as well. So I'm going to keep going with this. So I'm just going to give you guys a few tips about weeds and kind of soil prep and mulching and wood chips and things that we offer, and some ideas of, I've been in the garden, I think, since 2017. And I was actually in Arlington a few years before that. And it's amazing how different the soil in my Arlington garden plot and the garden plot I got at Chinquapin were. The Chinquapin plot, whoever had it before me had really worked in a lot of compost, a lot of manure. It drains much better. It's a really a much better soil to actually grow things effectively. So depending on what kind of soil you have when you get out to your plot, you can get a soil test. I think Donna has put some in the shed, or we probably have some in the shed. They're also available at Fairlington at the center, and you mail that into Virginia Tech and it will give you an idea of what you need to do to amend your soil. But really just aerating the soil, adding compost is really the best thing you can do to make it drain better and provide nutrients. And you need to add nutrients, yearly, because you're depleting them with what you grow. Rotating crops definitely helps with nutrient issues and helps you, replace nutrients. And a lot of that is on the Master Gardener website for information as well. And I think, Donna, there's a soil prep class, right? I think, or soil prep on the website at least.
There is. If they go into my vegetable gardening without fear part 1, there's a whole section on how to examine your soil and look and see what condition it's in and does it drain well, and also how to do the soil test and where to get a link for where to get the form. But we have, and in there's a list of places you can get the soil test kit. You can get them up at Green Street, right up the street.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
thanks.
that's probably
Perfect.
That's probably the closest place if there aren't any in our shed.
Yeah. And we'll get some more for the shed if there aren't any, for sure. But yeah, as Donna also mentioned, a lot of people in the gardens have made raised beds. That not only allows you to control the soil that's in the bed that you're planting in, but it's a good way to kind of space out your garden, make pathways, and really have a much more organized garden. I have yet to do that because I'm kind of lazy and it's a lot of hard work, but hopefully one day I will get to it. But when Anne also mentioned monitoring, the interesting thing about monitoring and volunteering for that is you walk around the gardens and see what everyone else is doing. So I would also recommend, if you're a new gardener, walk around and look at other people's gardens, and that gives you really good ideas for what you can do. So
I guess I did have those charts in there on the soil. Sorry, I forgot.
Here's what the soil
here you
test
go.
looks like.
Sorry, I was trying to be quicker because I was talking.
No,
fast.
it's good. It's good. We're gonna send this, so it'll be fine. Yeah. So my primary job today is to tell you all, please stay on top of your weeds. Weeds are a problem for all of us. I went out last weekend to the plot. I don't think I had been there since late February, and 80% of my plot was covered in weeds. The important things about weeding is to weed well and to weed carefully and to weed often. If you go in and till your plot, you're going to turn up more weed seeds than you're going to take out, possibly. I got someone to till my plot for me initially, and it was awful because then I ended up with 8,000 different weeds from the weeds that I had initially had in the plot. So you really want to try to do your best to cover the soil with mulch. If you're going to make pathways, we have wood chips in the top bin and bottom bins of the garden. And to give you guys an idea, these are many common weeds that we have at Chinquapin, but also just around Alexandria and Arlington. So I was out this weekend and I pulled tons of this hairy bittercress. The problem with hairy bittercress, it's this white one right here at the top, is it looks beautiful and it's an adorable little white flower. When it turns into a seed pod, it explodes and it reseeds everywhere. And so if you have weeds, they're not just your problem. They're going to get in everyone else's plot. So the reason that weeds and weeding are so important is because we want to keep everything under control, to try to keep the pathways clear, as well as keep weeds from spreading into other people's plots. Veronica Speedwell is also their teeny tiny little beautiful flowers that are coming up right now. I will say the difference in Veronica Speedwell is it's very easy to pull up because it's a big clump, as well as, you know, like the lamb's quarter and oh, what's the other one? Hen something. You know, a lot of the weeds that you have are probably going to be easy to weed if you do it now. And it's also much easier to weed if the soil, if it has rained and the soil is moist and damp. If it's really dry, it's much harder to weed. But we're just here to stress as much as we can, try to stay on top of your weeds. It's hard. We all have this problem, especially in the pathways, because those are common areas that we really need to stay on top of. Covering the plots, if you're, as Anne said, if you're not going to garden, but maybe, you know, a third or half of your plot, get some kind of tarp or get landscape fabric and cover the part you're not working with, and it'll suppress the weeds and it will also help you. And then the soil will be in much better shape when you actually get ready to go and work it and grow in that part. So, you know, we're all, weeds are everyone's nightmare. They're everywhere. The grasses, the Bermuda grass especially, is really grows in between the crevices of the wood that surrounds my plot, between the plot and the path. It's just very hard to dig out. So, you know, do your best. We're all working together to try to do it. But these are just a few of the things that you will see when you head out to the garden, as well as a few of the pests that you will likely not see for a few weeks, but you will start seeing in the summer. And we are an organic garden, so you cannot spray chemical pest control. One thing that a lot of us have found effective is a product called neem oil, NEEM, which is an organic product, and you buy it in a concentrate, mix it with water, You need to spray it though very, very early in the morning or very late in the evening because it will roast your plants if you go spray neem oil on them in the middle of the day and they're in the sun. You know, but it's really good for aphids. I have aphids all over my clematis plants at my house, and the neem oil takes care of them really quickly. So, you know, if you have questions for us about what kind of products you can use, because there are a lot of natural products that are pretty effective. We are happy to answer all of those questions. Let's see. The other suggestion we have is we are all, you know, we love tomatoes, we love peppers, we love squash, we love our greens, but we also need flowers and pollinators to make those plants grow. So you may consider in the corners of your plot or having an area for pollinators, pollinator plants. You know, Green Street right up the street has an excellent selection of perennial pollinators, so they'll come back. You don't have to buy annuals every year. There are a lot of really great things that grow from seed. Seed packets are very inexpensive. A lot of the gardeners grow zinnias every year. Cosmos grow really well. Many options. So, you know, think about adding a few flowers as well as of all of those vegetables. It really will benefit the garden as a whole, as well as being pretty. And you can cut them and take them home and enjoy them inside as well.
Elizabeth, I think, yeah, there's your list.
Yeah. So here's a whole nother list. Salvia is also another really great one. We always have a lot of beautiful sunflowers. You know, when you're planting this stuff, I would say with the sunflowers, just think about where you put them because they will get really tall and they can shade things out. So just, you know, think about what you're planting. You know, and obviously there's a lot of good native plants that are also excellent and provide excellent food for the bees and the butterflies. So as I said, we will send out this list so you guys can have access to all of these things. And thanks, Donna, for sharing those slides and for letting me crib off of the slides. But yeah, that is, I know, a lot of information, but you know, there's a lot to learn when gardening. And as Ann said, we're all still learning after even however many years we've been out at the gardens. And the seasons are different every year. One year you'll have great tomatoes, the next year they're just not great. So it does vary a lot, and we've all had very different experiences. So the other few things that I have on my list to mention is we have a local company called Earth Brew Compost, which delivers compost to the gardens twice a year. Eric, I think his place is out in Maryland, and he makes what I like to call black gold. It is amazing compost at a very reasonable price for the amount that you get. And I think he is delivering in the next few weeks to the gardens. So Ann sent an email with Eric's information, and you can pay him via PayPal or Venmo. And he will either deliver the compost to your plot for a small extra fee, or you can pick it up from his truck when he comes and haul it by wheelbarrow. But I mean, I get it every year because it really helps amend your soil and keep the nutrients going. And it's really a wonderful product.
Elizabeth, I'm actually already sent that email out to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, so
with
everyone
the
should have gotten it.
information to contact Eric to order. His first delivery is going to be April 2nd.
April 2nd. Okay. And Ann, if you want to we also do have a compost project at the garden. So Ann, if you want to talk about Andy's project
one of our
briefly.
gardeners, Andy Biley, whose plot is S7, a couple of years ago started a project. He was picking up tons and tons of coffee grounds from Starbucks. And so he's now set up a little compost area. It's down by the lower garden bins, the big bins there for the wood chips and leaf mulch. And the way the program works is if you participate, meaning if you contribute to the pile, then you can reap the rewards from it. In other words, the compost at the end. If anyone is interested in participating in this program, just email me and I'll give you Andy's email address and he can tell you how it works and what you need to do.
Wonderful. Thank you. The last thing I will say is we've already mentioned Green Street, which is the closest garden center to the gardens. It's right on the corner of Braddock, and it is locally owned, as well as one of my favorite garden centers is Knowles Produce out in Springfield. That's also locally owned. It's been around for about 60 years. And then there are a few Merrifield garden centers. You know, I don't think any of us can encourage you enough to think about growing native plants and pollinators when you make those choices. It's just really important for the gardens and the environment to try to, you know, be as close to native as we can. So those are 3 places that I would highly recommend. Green Street is very convenient because it's right there. We do have a few questions in the chat.
I think I might have answered most of those.
Okay. We had one about fencing. Did you? Oh, yep. Ann got
Yeah,
that.
I did. Yeah, the fence height restriction is 72 inches. But somebody was asking about recommendations for brands and everything. And I just meant the main thing is to pick a really sturdy metal post. And also some good sturdy netting, so that it doesn't flop into the path. When it flops into the path, it becomes a tripping hazard, and I've actually seen birds get caught in. So it's very important to do that.
Yeah, I have freed a lot of butterflies and birds also because I will tell you not to do what I did. When I put up my fence post, I then folded the fencing over the top. So the butterflies were flying in it and getting stuck. So I had to cut the fencing over the top off. So just make sure that, you know, you're kind of thinking, being aware when you put it up, what might get trapped or stuck in there. But I do agree that sturdier netting, but you don't want it to be so sturdy that it flops. So there are a lot of different options. But if you walk around and you see someone's that is really working well, you know, and you ask them where they got it, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, and I posted a link to a number of plots, including donuts, by the way, that are using some pretty good stuff. That is, and you can buy this at Home Depot, any place. One thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about pollinators. The new gardeners may not know that we actually have 5 beehives adjacent to the plots in the lower gardens. These are not gardeners. These are beehive people. And so they have 5 working hives down there. And so it's wonderful. The more flowers that we can produce, the more bees we'll get. And the more bees we get, the better pollination we have. So feel free to walk down there. Just don't get too close or disturb the bees. But they are very busy and they create an awful lot of great honey.
We also have a perennial flower bed there, pollinator bed right next to it with the bench where the bench is. So we use volunteers from the volunteer program to help maintain that, and we have several of those perennials that Elizabeth mentioned there or showed, as well as some herbs and flowering shrubs. And that is of course, the idea is to have the bees, and then they have the pollinating flowers right next to them. And in a garden, all of our gardens with flowers next to that. And only thing I'd mention you did have on your list, perennials. And the perennials come up each year, of course, that's what it means. So you have to be sure to be careful where you put them in your plot, because if you want room for your vegetables, it's good to have flowers. I use annual flowers in mine, so I plant them by seed every year, and that's really easy. And like Elizabeth said, they grow like bananas. They grow really well, and every time you go out there, the butterflies and bees, and it's great. Plus, having cut flowers for home.
Yeah, and much less expensive, the seed packets. We do have a question in the chat about if there's anything special to keep in mind for raised beds. I think, again, on the Master Gardener website, I know there's a lot of raised bed information, but you definitely need a specific or a more specific kind of soil. You don't want to just put a bunch of topsoil in there. It's going to drain a lot. So you need to have something that at least holds you know, an amount of moisture that will keep the plants fed. And Ed, I know you have amazing raised beds, so I don't know if you have any specific thoughts on that.
Yeah, I actually bought raised bed soil. They have such a thing. It's not potting soil, but it's higher quality than garden soil. One of the things that are great about raised beds, I know Donna has a bunch of them too, is that sometimes when we have very heavy rains, we get a little flooding in the plots, and some of the plots, even some of them on the higher end. And I've lost pepper plants because of their feet get wet and they just die. So raised beds are a great solution to that. And I also have fewer weeds in the raised beds. And they're much easier. They're much more aerated. They do dry out a little quicker, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I would, I'm a huge proponent of them. And I think, especially for those of you who have plots in the lower end, you might want to look into them if your plots are prone, if they're downhill and prone to getting a lot of water.
And we also have a question about the water being turned on. We're hoping for early April, but we don't have an exact date yet. But when the water comes on, Ann will definitely email everyone and let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Last year it was the end of March. We got them to turn it on a little earlier, but normally it's not until the first week or so of April. But Richard keeps on them about it.
Yeah,
Make
I
sure we
actually,
get it on as soon as we can.
We
I
all
wrote
want the water.
Maureen- I asked Maureen today, actually, to see if we might be able to get that on April 1st. It's a Friday. So, because I looked at the long-term weather forecast looked pretty good. It's going to get colder this weekend, unfortunately, but it gets warm after that. But we'll see. They can't turn the water on until there's no chance of of a long-term freezing that would break the pipes. So, but as soon as we can get that on, because I know a number of us are planting and we want the water. Some of us have to bring water in jugs to the garden from a house, but we don't want to do that very long. And so we'll try to get it on as soon as we can.
Yeah. Ellen is asking about the pros and cons of fencing. Ellen, there are deer and they eat everything. And there are bunnies, they also eat everything. It depends really on where you are in the garden. If all of the plots around you have fencing, there's a chance the deer may not get into your gardens. I actually was in the garden for 3 years before I finally put up a fence because they came in and just ate all of my beets in one day. So, it's very hit and miss. Sometimes they'll get you, sometimes they won't get you, but most of us have put up some kind of fencing to keep the deer from eating everything that we're growing. So that is why there's fencing everywhere.
It also depends on what you grow. They don't eat tomatoes for some reason. So if you have a lot of tomatoes, they can be okay. So they do like peppers. They do eat greens. They eat beans. A lot of people use covering for some of their vegetables too, which are lower down to the ground. And so that's another technique you can use. But Elizabeth's correct. We do have deer issues, and fences can help on that.
I have resisted putting up a fence, and I have not had a big problem. I do grow an awful lot of alliums, talking about garlic, things like that. The deer don't like that. But I also use hoop houses, and Donna and I have actually talked about doing a little workshop out at the gardens to talk about how you can use hoop houses to put netting over to keep out bugs, but also it keeps out the deer. So I use hoop houses, and that's worked pretty effectively. They do go after sweet potatoes. That's the other thing they really love. They'll decimate sweet potato plot.
Yeah, I will also say the last few years, there used to be a garden cat, which I think we have sadly lost. But the garden cat scared away most of the chipmunks, and the chipmunks are now everywhere, and they're definitely eating last year all my tomatoes that were down low. And they would just nibble all the bottoms of the tomatoes off, and
And
What
the
can you do?
fences, the fences do not keep out the squirrels and chipmunks.
nothing is going to help with the squirrels and chipmunks. So, we are feeding the wildlife as well as ourselves.
Yeah, you're really gonna notice it if we have a dry spell, that the birds and the small critters will come and nibble on your tomatoes. And instead of just taking one entire tomato, they'll just nibble on several of them. And they're just looking for moisture because it's so dry, and you'll really see an issue with it. One of the things that's interesting is they don't seem to go after yellow tomatoes. They like the red ones for whatever
Oh,
reason. I don't know.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
They also,
I was growing lemon boy tomatoes for many years and they never touched them.
They did. I've had a lemon boy, and it also, everyone, lemon boy tomatoes are amazing. They grow really well. But yeah, they didn't eat my lemon boy. They ate everything else. So.
and you also can pick your tomatoes early. Pick them green and put on your windowsill at home, and they ripen perfectly fine. And that keep the squirrels wait till it's just right the day before or the day you want to pick them, and that's when and the chipmunks, that's when they come get them, and they take a few bites out of the nice tomato, and then they run go get some other tomato, and it's a little frustrating. But if you pick them early and take them home, you can solve that problem too.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions about anything? What to grow, what not to grow, what works, what doesn't work? Any other thoughts from anyone?
If you do think of anything after the session, don't hesitate to email any of us. And we'll provide you with whatever information we can.
Yeah, and I found when I was, let's see, what's my 5th year? I know my 1st year, I walked around a lot and looked at what you can see what people are growing, and you can also see the good gardeners and how they're doing and what they're doing, and talk to them. But you get a real good feel for just by walking around and taking a look at other people's plots. We all there, everybody's got different techniques, and we all are successful. And like Elizabeth said, some things don't work some years, and then they work the next year, they work great. So it's a constant learning process for all of us.
Yeah, I think you'll find a couple of years ago, we had issues with a blight getting on our basil. And, I looked at my couple of plants, and I thought, what is going on here? And I walked around the gardens and saw it everywhere. So it wasn't just my issue. It was something that traveled to others. And that's the one thing also about community gardens, because we're such close neighbors, our plots get diseases, your plot's going to get a disease.
It depends, Ann, though. It depends upon what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, blight is environmental. And so it depends on the conditions. And so if we have lots of rain and water and humidity and there's not enough airflow around your basil, you're going to get some of the blights, but it's not like measles,
Yeah, right. It's not.
Now Mexican bean beetles. We can talk about that, but yeah. And I saw Stacy put in there about the weeds. As a first year gardener, the biggest thing you could do is get rid of your weeds, get the roots, and take some of that mulch, some of that leaf mulch, and bare soil is an invitation for weeds to germinate. So just take some of the leaf mulch when we get some in the bins, and use wood mulch on your paths and in the walkways around your plot, and that just saves the work that's not any fun, because the fun work is growing, watching things germinate, and harvesting and eating, not pulling weeds.
Well,
Yeah,
I will also
we actually
say-
have leaf mulch right now in both bins.
Yeah.
Okay,
upper
good.
and lower. So we have
So
tons of.
leaf mulch is good. A couple inches of leaf mulch, maybe on top of newspaper, maybe not, is really handy for keeping the weeds down, but you got to pull them first. So.
Yeah, you got to try to get everything out and get it out by the roots. And
And
I
I
will
have one
say,
I have one other comment on fencing. If you look at G3, I guess NC3, correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy, we have a plastic kind of fencing. It's kind of greenish. I wouldn't recommend that fencing. I think it's less expensive, but it gets brittle in the cold, and then it cracks. Where
Yeah.
if you look at the fencing on M6 or L6 or the other ones that she recommends, it's a little bit more money, but it actually has lasted. I think we're in our 3rd or 4th year with it, where the plastic fencing, like it actually will just like, it'll crack and the whole side will come down, or or the wind will take it because it gets brittle. And so it's just, you just wasted your money and your time. So definitely, like we're gonna be having to work on that fencing and those plots for the food bank. So that's the only thing, just to save yourself effort. Don't go for the cheap plastic.
Yeah.
I gotta go. My grandkids, I can hear them outside the door, and it's time. I'm in California, so it's 5 o'clock and it's dinner time and it's a bewitching hour. So see you all. Bye.
Thank you for thanks for helping, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Have a good vacation.
Bye.
The only other thing I'll mention that we didn't mention is in the pathways and in your plots, putting down newspaper or cardboard in the pathways and then covering it with the wood chips is a really excellent way to try to suppress the Bermuda grass and the other things that creep into the pathways, as well as in your plot. If you're making a path within your plot, you know, that's a really effective way to do it. But as Donna said, leaf mulch, covering it with something, because yeah, staying on top of the weeds. But after year 1, the weeding gets easier because you're keeping up with it. And by year 2 or 3, your plot is in much better shape because you've maintained it and you're taking care of the weeds more consistently, and it really does help.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend that you hunker down and do a really good job on getting the Bermuda grass, the wiregrass, out of your paths. And it's a lot of work, and dig it all the way out. And then put down a layer of either cardboard or newspapers, as Elizabeth mentioned. And on top of that, put a weed block cloth. Don't use plastic because it's slippery. Put down, and then on top of that, put the chips. And I have that around my plot, and I have very few weeds. Once in a while, I'll see one on the edge and just dig it out, and it's no big deal. But if you just plop the wood chips on top of the path and don't weed it, they'll come right back through it.
I'd also like to add that when you do dig out, take the time to dig out by the roots, that you shake out all that soil. Don't get rid of that. Don't put it in the compost. Shake it all out, because it's great. That's great soil, and you'll be losing all of that.
Yeah, we also want to caution you against putting weeds with lots of dirt on them, on the roots, into the yard waste bins. The city, quite frankly, will not unload them if they see a lot of dirt in there.
Yeah, and you've paid for that dirt, so don't throw it in the trash.
Exactly.
You need it. You need it to grow things. I actually have I would recommend, I have it's called a Japanese hori knife, and it's excellent for digging weeds. But when
Yes.
you pull the weed up, it has a big clump of dirt. You just take the knife and tap, and the dirt just falls right off, and it saves you a lot of effort. Also, those kind of 3-pronged claw digger, they must have a name. I don't know what they're called, but those are also excellent at getting the weeds out of the plots. But you know, I think I got my hori on Amazon for about $20, and it's the best $20 I've ever spent
Absolutely, I agree.
in my life.
Also, just to clarify, I think sometimes it's confusing that the yard waste, we have those two. I know we write about it, but just to say, yard waste is plant waste, and then trash is trash. It's paper, plastic, wire, whatever. But yard waste means plant waste.
Yeah, the weeds.
Yeah, the city actually has a different set of trucks, and they load up the yard waste and they take it to a compost facility in Maryland, I think, and they make compost out of it. And so it's very important that there's no trash in there, because there have been instances in the past in which they loaded up a truck and took it to the facility, and the facility rejected it because it was trash in it. So if you happen to open up a yard waste bin and you see some trash in it, please take it out, put it in the trash bin. We have people who walk through there, you know, walking their dogs or whatever, and they'll just dump stuff in our yard waste bins and not pay attention to what's there.
We also have a large for old stakes and fencing and boards that you might be pulling out of your plot that were left over from the previous gardener, that all goes down in a large trash area behind the mulch bins in the lower garden. You can't just leave stuff lying next to the trash can. They don't pick it up. So if you have any large materials, particularly metal or wood boards, et cetera, just take it down to and put it where and then we have by the lower mulch bins and the trash pile behind that. And then we have that picked up each year by the city. Elizabeth, I don't know if you hadn't mentioned yet, but we are going to have an in-person spring social in April 23rd. We've not, because of the COVID, we've not been able to have our get-togethers that we normally have each year, and we do have a potluck spring get-together at lunchtime on April 23rd. Everybody will be invited. Please bring a dish. We provide some drinks, but that's another chance of us to meet you in person and have a good time sharing a meal together.
Yep. That was last on my list, Richard, so you beat me to it. No, we're very excited to finally, it's been a few years, so having the actual picnic. And it's in the Chinquapin Pavilion, which if you're driving out of the gardens, the pavilion is on your right before you get to the playground and the tennis courts. So that's where the social will be on April 23rd. And it's potluck, so everyone gets to show off their recipe skills. And do bring a serving utensil for your dish. So we will put all this in the email and make sure we get all the information out to everyone soon.
We have good cooks, good gardeners, and we have good cooks, and we all like to eat vegetables and too. So we look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah,
We have another social in August, and that's an opportunity. At that point, we've been able to harvest tomatoes and cucumbers and all kinds of things out of our plots, and it's also potluck. And most of the dishes that are provided then are from our gardens, which is really terrific. And we give awards. We have awards every year for best garden and all kinds of things, and those are judged by our extension agent, Kirsten Conrad. Maybe more on that later.
Yeah, that's August 13th if you want to mark your calendar. It's already scheduled. So. Do we have any last minute questions, last minute thoughts? If not, I mean, as we have all said, we are here. The board is here to, help, and most of the gardeners that are out, if you see them, go talk to them. They are also happy to help. Everyone loves talking gardening. So we will post this online as well as send around Dona's set of slides that have links. And there are also a lot of links that we sent in the agenda to the Master Gardener page and a lot of other information. So please send questions. We're here to help, and we're super happy to have so many new gardeners. And we will look forward to meeting you all on April 23rd. I think that's it, right?
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.